Billionaire was on vacation playing with a child, until he learned the boy was his ex's son. Before we begin, drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from, and once the story ends, don't forget to rate it from 0 to 10. Oh, and make sure to follow our channel for more stories like this. Now, sit back and enjoy every detail. The warm, Florida sun cast dancing shadows across the crystal-clear pool as Cale Donovan adjusted his sunglasses and leaned back in the cushioned lounge chair. For the first time in 3 years, his phone lay silent beside him, switched to airplane mode. No board meetings, no acquisition deals, no emergency calls from his technology empire that had made him one of the youngest billionaires in maritime tech. At 36, Cale had built Donovan Marine Solutions from a small boat repair shop into a global powerhouse, designing cutting-edge navigation systems for luxury yachts and commercial vessels. But success had come at a price. He couldn't remember the last time he'd taken a real vacation, the last time he'd watched a sunset without calculating quarterly projections in his head. The Ocean View Resort had been his assistant's suggestion, a last-ditch effort to force him into the break his doctor had practically demanded after his latest physical revealed dangerously high stress levels. "Just 1 week, Mr. Donovan," she'd pleaded. "The company won't collapse in 7 days." Now, on his 3rd day, Cale finally felt the knots in his shoulders beginning to loosen. The sound of children's laughter from the nearby pool area created a soundtrack he'd forgotten existed. Pure, uncomplicated joy. A splash followed by a small, frustrated cry caught his attention. Near the shallow end of the children's pool, a little boy with tousled, dark hair was struggling with an oversized inflatable ring, his small arms flailing as he tried to maintain his balance in the water. Without thinking, Cale stood up and walked over. The child couldn't be more than 4 years old, his olive skin glistening with pool water, his dark eyes wide with determination rather than fear. "Hey there, buddy," Cale said gently, crouching at the pool's edge. "Having some trouble with that floaty?" The boy looked up, water dripping from his long eyelashes. "It keeps spinning," he said with the serious tone only children could manage when discussing matters of grave importance. "Want some help? I used to be pretty good in the water when I was your age." The child nodded eagerly, and Cale found himself sliding off his expensive Italian leather sandals and rolling up the legs of his linen pants. When was the last time he'd gotten in a pool? When was the last time he'd spoken to a child? The water was refreshingly cool against his skin as he stepped in. "What's your name, champion?" "Benicio," the boy replied, pronouncing it with careful precision. "But everyone calls me Ben." "Nice to meet you, Ben. I'm Cale. Now let's figure out this swimming situation." For the next hour, Cale found himself completely absorbed in teaching Benicio basic swimming techniques. They started with simple floating exercises, Cale's large hands providing steady support under the boy's small back as he learned to trust the water. "Remember, buddy, the water wants to hold you up. You just have to let it," Cale explained, watching as Benicio's tense shoulders gradually relaxed. The child was a quick learner, fearless in the way only young children could be. His laugh was infectious, a pure bubbling sound that seemed to unlock something in Cale's chest that had been tightly wound for years. Look, Mr. Cale," Benicio called out, successfully floating on his back for a full 10 seconds before his excitement caused him to tip sideways. "That was amazing. You're going to be swimming like a fish in no time," Cale said, steadying the boy again. There was something about this child that felt familiar, the way he tilted his head when concentrating, the determined set of his jaw when facing a challenge. Even his laugh seemed to echo something deep in Cale's memory. As they practiced kicks and arm movements, other resort guests began to notice the tall, handsome man patiently teaching the small boy. Some smiled at the heartwarming scene, assuming they were father and son enjoying their vacation together. The thought should have felt strange to Cale. He'd never considered himself particularly good with children. His life had been consumed by business for so long that family had seemed like a distant concept, something for other people. Yet here he was, finding genuine joy in Benicio's progress, feeling proud of every small achievement. "You're a natural teacher," said an elderly woman sitting nearby with her husband. "Your son is lucky to have such a patient father." Cale opened his mouth to correct her, but something stopped him. The words felt foreign on his tongue. He'd never been anyone's father, had never even seriously considered it. But watching Benicio's face light up with each successful kick, feeling the implicit trust the child placed in him, stirred emotions he didn't recognize. As the afternoon wore on, they moved from swimming lessons to building an elaborate sandcastle at the pool's edge. complete with moats and towers. Benicio's creativity was boundless, his stories about the imaginary kingdom growing more elaborate with each edition. "And this tower is where the dragon sleeps," he explained seriously, patting sand into shape with his small hands. "But he's a good dragon. He protects everyone." "Smart dragon," Kale replied, adding his own architectural improvements. "Every kingdom needs good protection." The sun was beginning to lower in the sky, painting everything in golden hues, when Kale noticed Benicio glancing around more frequently, his earlier ease replaced by a hint of concern. "Looking for someone, buddy?" Kale asked gently. "My mommy said she'd be back soon," Benicio replied, his lower lip trembling slightly. "She had to make some work calls. I'm sure she'll be here any minute. Want to add a bridge to our castle while we wait?" They were putting the finishing touches on their masterpiece when a voice called out across the pool area, clear and melodic despite the underlying tension. "Benicio, there you are, sweetheart." Kale looked up, shading his eyes against the setting sun to see a woman hurrying toward them. Even from a distance, something about her movement, the way she carried herself, sent a jolt of recognition through him. As she drew closer, his breath caught in his throat. Auburn hair that caught the light like fire, green eyes that had haunted his dreams for 5 years, the same graceful way of moving that had once made him stop mid-sentence in board meetings just to watch her cross a room. Maya Leclerc, his ex-fiancée, the woman who had disappeared from his life so completely that he'd begun to wonder if their entire relationship had been a dream. And now she was here, at the same resort, reaching for the child he'd spent the afternoon with, the child whose familiar gestures and expressions suddenly made perfect, impossible sense. Benicio ran to her, pool water still dripping from his hair, excitement radiating from every inch of his small frame. Mommy, this is Mr. Kale. He taught me how to swim like a fish." Maya's eyes met Kale's across the space between them, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. Her face had gone pale, but her voice remained steady as she knelt to embrace her son. "That's wonderful, baby. Did you remember to say thank you?" "Thank you, Mr. Kale," Benicio called out cheerfully, oblivious to the tension crackling between the adults. Kale stood slowly, water from his impromptu swimming lesson still darkening his expensive pants. His mind was reeling, trying to process the impossibility of this moment. Maya here, Maya with a child who looked to be about 4 years old, a child who had her eyes but bore an unmistakable resemblance to— "Hello, Kale," Maya said quietly, her voice carefully controlled. Maya. Her name felt rusty on his tongue, weighted with 5 years of unanswered questions and unspoken regrets. This is unexpected." She straightened, her hand resting protectively on Benicio's shoulder. The child looked between them with growing curiosity, sensing the shift in atmosphere even if he didn't understand it. "Mommy, do you know Mr. Kale?" Benicio asked innocently. Maya's composure wavered for just a fraction of a second before she found her voice again. "Yes, sweetheart. Mr. Kale and we knew each other a long time ago." The understatement hung in the air between them like a challenge. 5 years ago, they had been planning their wedding. 5 years ago, she had been the center of his universe, the only person who could make him forget about profit margins and market projections. 5 years ago, she had looked at him with love instead of this careful, guarded expression. And 5 years ago, everything had fallen apart in a single devastating night that had changed both their lives forever. Now standing in the fading Florida sunshine with pool water soaking through his clothes and a child's laughter still echoing in his ears, Kale found himself face to face with the woman he'd never stopped loving, and a boy who shared his dark hair, his stubborn chin, and his love of water. A boy who was exactly the right age to be. "We should talk," Maya said quietly, her eyes never leaving his face. Kale nodded, not trusting his voice, because as he looked at Benicio, really looked at him, he saw not just Maya's beauty but his own reflection staring back at him from a face too young to understand the magnitude of this moment. What discovery would change everything he thought he knew about the last 5 years of his life? The hotel's beachside cafe hummed with the quiet conversations of evening diners, but Kale heard none of it. Across from him, Maya sat with perfect posture, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. Benicio was safely tucked away in the resort's kids' club, happily engaged in a movie night that would buy them the privacy this conversation demanded. "He's beautiful," Kale said finally, breaking the silence that had stretched between them since they'd settled into the secluded corner booth. His voice was rough, waited with an emotion he couldn't quite name. Benicio. He's an incredible kid. Looking at Maya now, Kale could see that the years had been kind to her. At 32, she had grown into her beauty. The sharp edges of youth softened into something more refined, more confident. But there were lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before, signs of the struggles she'd faced alone. Maya's fingers tightened around her cup. Yes, he is. How old is he? The question hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Maya's green eyes met his, and in them, Kale saw the answer before she spoke. 4. He turned 4 last month. The math was simple, brutal in its clarity. Kale's hands pressed flat against the table, his knuckles white. 4 years old, which meant, Jesus, Maya. The words escaped him as barely more than a whisper. He's mine, isn't he? She didn't deny it, didn't try to soften the blow or ease him into the truth. She simply nodded once and watched as the knowledge hit him like a physical force. When did you know? He asked, his business-trained mind automatically seeking facts, timelines, concrete information to ground himself in this new reality. I found out 2 weeks after I left Boston. Her voice was steady, but Kale could see the pain in her eyes, the memories she'd been carrying alone for nearly 5 years. I was sick, throwing up every morning, exhausted all the time. I thought it was just stress from everything that happened, but when the test came back positive, why didn't you tell me? The question came out sharper than he'd intended, years of hurt and confusion bleeding through his carefully maintained control. Maya's composure finally cracked, her voice rising slightly. Tell you what, Kale, that I was pregnant with the child of a man who'd been cheating on me with his secretary? A man who looked me in the eye and swore he loved me while he was taking another woman to the same restaurants we went to? I never cheated on you. The words came out flat, definitive. Not with Jessica, not with anyone. The photos were taken out of context, and you know it. Kale leaned forward, his eyes intense. I told you then, I'm telling you now. I was drugged that night. I don't remember half of what happened, but I do remember waking up in my own bed alone, with the worst hangover of my life, and messages from you saying we were over. Maya's laugh was bitter. Convenient amnesia. Convenient? Kale's voice dropped dangerously low. Do you know what the last 5 years have been like for me, Maya? Do you have any idea what it did to me when you disappeared? I hired private investigators. I called everyone we knew. I spent months trying to find you, trying to understand why you wouldn't even give me a chance to explain. Because I saw the pictures. Her voice broke, and for a moment, the composed woman across from him dissolved into the heartbroken girl who'd left him 5 years ago. I saw you with her, Kale. Your hands on her waist, her lips on your cheek. You were smiling. You looked happy. The weight of those words settled between them like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples of old pain across the surface of this new reality. I was set up, Kale said quietly. It took me almost 2 years to prove it, but I finally tracked down the photographer. Jessica had paid him to take those photos at exactly the right moments to make it look like something it wasn't. She'd been planning it for months, waiting for the right opportunity. Maya's face went very still. What? She was obsessed with me, with the idea of us together. When she realized I was serious about proposing to you, she decided to remove the obstacle. Kale's jaw tightened at the memory. She drugged my drink at the company party that night, made sure I was disoriented, then orchestrated those photo opportunities. The kiss was her kissing me while I was barely conscious. The touching was her positioning us for the camera. That's... Maya's voice trailed off, her mind clearly racing. Impossible? Crazy? I thought so too until I saw the proof. Bank records showing payments to the photographer. Text messages on her old phone planning the whole thing. She confessed everything when I confronted her with the evidence. Why didn't you find you and tell you? Kale's smile was sad, tired. I tried, Maya. For 2 years I tried. But you'd vanished completely. Changed your name, moved somewhere with no forwarding address. It was like you'd never existed. Maya was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. When she spoke again, her voice was small, uncertain. I was Maya Chen for 3 years. I went back to my mother's maiden name. Chen? Kale nodded slowly. That explains why I could never find you. The silence stretched between them again, but this time it was different. The anger was still there. The hurt and the years of misunderstanding, but underneath it all was something else. The recognition that they'd both been victims of someone else's manipulation. I need to know about him, Kale said eventually. About Benicio. Everything. His first words when he learned to walk, what his favorite food is, what makes him laugh. I need to know about the 4 years I missed. Maya's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. His first word was agua, water. He's always been drawn to it, just like... She stopped herself. Just like me. Cale's voice was soft, wondering. That's why he took to swimming so naturally today. He was walking by 10 months. Early for most kids, but he was determined to keep up with the older children in our apartment building. A small smile touched Maya's lips. He's stubborn like that. Stubborn like both of us. Cale corrected gently. His favorite food changes every week, but lately it's been grilled cheese cut into triangles, never squares, always triangles. And he laughs. Her voice grew warm with love. He laughs at everything. Cartoons, silly faces when I sing off-key in the shower. He finds joy in the smallest things. As she spoke, Cale could picture it all. A smaller version of himself taking his first tentative steps, splashing gleefully in bathtubs, giggling at his mother's terrible singing. 4 years of moments he'd never get back, memories that belonged to someone else. Where have you been living? He asked. Portland, Oregon. I got a job at a small marketing firm, worked my way up to creative director. It's not the life I planned, but it's been good. Quiet, safe. And you never... There's no one else? The question was presumptuous, invasive, but he had to know. Maya shook her head. I tried dating once. A nice guy, a teacher at Ben's preschool. But every time he tried to get close, all I could think about was... She gestured helplessly between them. This. Us. What we used to have. The admission hung in the air between them, vulnerable and honest. I never stopped loving you, Cale said quietly. Even when I thought you'd betrayed me. Even when I was furious with you for disappearing. I never stopped. I kept your engagement ring in my desk drawer for 3 years before I could finally put it away. Cale, I'm not telling you this to pressure you or to make you feel guilty, he continued. I'm telling you because you need to know. Because our son deserves to know that he was conceived in love, even if that love got lost along the way. Tears were flowing freely down Maya's cheeks now. I was so scared, she whispered. When I found out I was pregnant, I was terrified. I didn't have a job, didn't have anywhere to go, and I thought the father of my child had betrayed me in the worst possible way. But I knew I wanted the baby. I knew I wanted him. You should have told me, Cale said. But there was no anger in it now, only sadness. Even if you hated me, even if you believed the worst about me, you should have told me I had a son. I know. The words were barely audible. I know that now. But at the time, I thought I was protecting him. Protecting both of us. They sat in silence for several minutes, each lost in their own thoughts, their own regrets. Finally, Cale spoke. What happens now? Maya looked up at him, her eyes red but determined. I don't know. This isn't... I never imagined we'd see each other again, much less that you'd meet Ben like this. I need time to process all of this. The truth about Jessica, about what really happened that night. Take all the time you need, Cale said. But Maya, I want to be part of his life. Part of both your lives, if you'll let me. I know I can't get back the 4 years I missed, but I want to be there for everything going forward. It's not that simple. Why not? Because you're you. The words burst out of her, loud enough to draw glances from nearby tables. She lowered her voice, but the intensity remained. You're Cale Donovan. You're worth billions of dollars. You have companies and responsibilities and a life that spans continents. Ben and I were just normal. We live in a 2-bedroom apartment, and our biggest excitement is finding a good deal at the grocery store. Cale stared at her, stunned. Do you really think that matters to me? Do you think I care about any of that when compared to having a son? I think you say that now, but what happens when the novelty wears off? What happens when being a father interferes with your business deals or your travel schedule? What happens when Ben asks why Daddy wasn't there for his birthday last year, or the year before that? The questions hit their target, each one a small wound that would need attention later. But underneath her concerns, Cale heard something else. Fear, not just of being hurt again, but of their son being hurt. I can't promise I'll be perfect, he said finally. I can't promise I won't make mistakes or that this transition will be easy for any of us. But I can promise you this. I will never voluntarily walk away from him, or from you. Not again. Before Maya could respond, a commotion near the cafe entrance caught their attention. Benicio was running toward them, his face bright with excitement, a resort staff member following apologetically behind. Mommy! Mr. Cale! The boy called out, apparently having escaped from the kids' club. Look what I made. He thrust a construction paper creation toward them, a crayon drawing of 3 stick figures standing next to what appeared to be a very lopsided castle. One figure was tall with dark scribbles for hair, one was medium-sized with long red lines cascading down, and one was very small, positioned between the other two. "It's us," Benicio announced proudly. "From today, we're a family." The innocent words hit both adults like a lightning strike. Maya's breath caught, and Cale felt something fundamental shift inside his chest. "That's beautiful, sweetheart," Maya managed, her voice thick with emotion. Benicio beamed, then climbed onto the bench next to Cale without invitation, settling against his side as if he'd been doing it his whole life. "Mr. Cale, will you teach me more swimming tomorrow?" the boy asked, looking up at him with eyes that were unmistakably his own. Cale looked down at his son, and felt his world rearrange itself around this new incredible truth. But would Maya give him the chance to be the father their child deserved? Or would the shadows of their past keep his family forever out of reach? The morning sun streamed through the resort's breakfast terrace as Cale watched Benicio carefully construct a tower from his pancakes, syrup serving as mortar between each fluffy layer. 3 days had passed since the revelation, and they'd fallen into a tentative routine. Breakfast together, swimming lessons, lunch by the pool, and evening walks along the beach. Maya sat across from them, nursing her second cup of coffee, and watching the interaction between father and son with a mixture of wonder and wariness. The resemblance between them was impossible to miss, now that she knew the truth. They had the same way of tilting their heads when concentrating, the same unconscious habit of running their hands through their hair when thinking. "The pancake tower is structurally unsound," Cale said seriously, examining Benicio's creation with the same intensity he once reserved for architectural plans. "You need better foundational support." "What's structural?" Benicio struggled with the word, his brow furrowing in concentration. "Structural. It means how strong something is built. Here, let me show you." Cale reached across the table and carefully repositioned one of the pancake pieces. "See? Now it won't fall down as easily. You know about building things?" Benicio's eyes went wide with admiration. "I know about lots of things involving water and boats and strong structures," Cale replied, cutting his own pancakes into precise triangles. The way he'd learned Benicio preferred all his food. "Maybe sometime I could show you some of the ships I helped design." "Ships? Real ships?" Benicio practically bounced in his chair. Maya cleared her throat gently. "Remember what we talked about yesterday, baby. Mr. Cale has his own life and work to get back to soon." The reminder hit its target. Cale's expression tightened almost imperceptibly, but Benicio didn't notice, already launching into an elaborate story about a pirate ship he'd dreamed about the night before. "Actually," Cale said carefully, "I've been thinking about extending my stay here. Maybe another week or 2. "You can't just rearrange your entire schedule," Maya began. "I own the company, Maya. I think I can manage my own calendar." There was an edge to his voice that made her stiffen. "Daddy never stayed anywhere for 2 weeks, Benicio said innocently, then caught himself. "I mean, my pretend daddy, from my imagination." The slip hit both adults like a physical blow. Maya's face went pale, while Cale felt something crack open in his chest. The child had been creating an imaginary father to fill the void Cale's absence had left. "Tell me about your pretend daddy," Cale said softly. Benicio looked uncertainly at his mother, who nodded encouragingly despite her obvious discomfort. "Well, he's really tall like you," Benicio began, warming to his subject. "And he knows how to swim really, really good. And he takes me to work with him sometimes. And he reads me stories about dragons and knights. And the boy's voice dropped to a whisper. "He tells me he's sorry he had to go away for work, but he loves me very much and he'll always come back." The silence that followed was deafening. Maya's eyes filled with tears. She blinked away quickly, while Cale struggled to maintain his composure. "Your pretend daddy sounds like a pretty great guy," Cale managed. "Yeah, but he's not real," Benicio said matter-of-factly. "Mommy says sometimes we have to imagine the things we want until they can be real." Over the boy's head, Cale met Maya's eyes, seeing in them the same thought that was racing through his mind. What if they didn't have to be imaginary anymore? After breakfast, they made their way to the beach where Cale had promised to teach Benicio how to build proper sand castles. The resort's private stretch of coastline was relatively quiet in the morning, giving them space to work without crowds. "The secret to a good sand castle," Cale explained, demonstrating the proper sand-to-water ratio, "is finding the right consistency. Too dry and it crumbles. Too wet and it won't hold shape. Like making cookies, Benicio exclaimed. Mommy taught me that. Exactly like making cookies. Your mom is a smart lady. As they worked, building an increasingly elaborate fortress, complete with moats and bridges, Cale found himself sharing stories from his own childhood that he'd never told anyone. Tales of building tree houses with his grandfather, of learning to sail in Boston Harbor, of the first boat engine he'd taken apart and rebuilt at age 12. Were you scared the first time you sailed by yourself? Benicio asked, carefully patting sand around the castle's main tower. Terrified, Cale admitted. But sometimes the best things happen when we're a little scared. Being scared means it's important to us. Maya, who had been reading nearby, looked up at this exchange. She'd never heard this vulnerable side of Cale before, not even during their relationship. The billionaire businessman she'd known had always seemed so self-assured, so confident in every decision. Are you scared now? Benicio asked with the innocent directness only children possessed. Cale paused in his sand sculpting, considering the question seriously. Yeah, buddy. I am. Of what? Of messing this up. Of not being the dad you deserve. Of your mom deciding I'm not good enough to be part of your family. The honesty in his voice made Maya's breath catch. This wasn't the controlled, strategic man she remembered. This was someone raw and uncertain. Someone willing to be vulnerable for the sake of a 4-year-old boy. But you taught me how to swim, Benicio said, as if this solved everything. And you make really good sand castles. I think you're already a good dad. The simple acceptance in those words nearly undid Cale completely. He had to turn away for a moment, pretending to examine their architectural progress while he fought for composure. Besides, Benicio continued, oblivious to the emotional storm he just created, Mommy likes you, I can tell. Oh, really? Cale glanced at Maya, who had gone suspiciously pink. How can you tell? She smiles different when she looks at you, like when she looks at ice cream. Despite everything, Maya burst into laughter. I do not look at ice cream that way. You totally do, Mommy. You get all happy and swoony. Swoony is not a word, Maya protested, but she was still smiling. It is now, Benicio declared with 4-year-old authority. As they finished the castle and moved on to swimming practice, Cale couldn't shake the feeling that this was what happiness felt like. Not the satisfaction of closing a big deal or the adrenaline rush of a successful acquisition, but this quiet contentment of being exactly where he belonged. Benicio's swimming had improved dramatically over the past few days. He could now float confidently on his back and even managed a few strokes of what might generously be called freestyle. Watch this, Mommy, he called out, demonstrating his latest achievement, swimming underwater for a full 3 seconds. That's amazing, sweetheart, Maya called back, but Cale noticed the slight tension in her voice. She was checking her phone more frequently today, responding to emails and text messages with increasing urgency. After lunch, while Benicio napped in their beach cabana, Cale finally addressed what he'd been sensing all morning. Everything okay? You seem distracted today. Maya sighed, setting down her phone. Work crisis. The Patterson campaign is imploding and I'm supposed to be handling the damage control remotely, but she gestured helplessly at the paradise around them. But it's hard to focus on crisis management when you're trying to figure out whether to trust your ex-fiancé with your son's heart. She looked at him sharply. That's not what I said. It's what you meant. They sat in silence for a moment, watching Benicio sleep peacefully, his small face relaxed and content. He's never been this happy, Maya said quietly. In 4 years, I've never seen him this consistently joyful, and that terrifies me. Why? Because what happens when this ends? When you go back to Boston and your billion-dollar empire, and he's left wondering why Daddy disappeared again. How do I explain that to him? Cale turned to face her fully. What if I told you I don't want to go back to Boston? At least, not without both of you. That's impossible. Why? Because my life is in Portland. My job, my apartment, Ben's preschool, our routine. I can't just uproot everything because you suddenly decided you want to play father. The words stung, and Cale felt his own defensive walls rising. Play father? Is that really what you think this is? I think you're a man who's used to getting what he wants when he wants it. And right now you want to be a dad. But wanting something and being capable of it long term are two different things. That's not fair, isn't it? Maya's voice rose slightly. Then she glanced at sleeping Benicio and forced herself to lower it. You've known he exists for 3 days, Cale. 3 days. And you're already talking about rearranging both our lives around this fantasy of instant family. It's not a fantasy. It is. The frustration she'd been holding back finally spilled over. You don't know what it's like to be up all night with a sick child, or to worry about daycare costs, or to explain why Daddy can't come to the school play because he's in Singapore closing a deal. You don't know what real parenthood is like. Cale's jaw tightened. And whose fault is that? I missed all of that because you chose not to tell me I had a son. You made that decision for both of us. I made that decision because I thought you were a cheating bastard who didn't deserve to know. The words hung between them like a slap. Benicio stirred in his sleep, and both adults immediately lowered their voices. I was wrong about that. Maya continued more quietly. I know that now, but that doesn't change the fact that you and I live in completely different worlds. You're talking about extending your vacation like it's nothing, but some of us have responsibilities we can't just delegate to assistants. So, what are you saying? That because I'm successful, I can't be a good father? That because I have money, I'm automatically disqualified from having a real relationship with my son? I'm saying that good intentions aren't enough. Parenting isn't a project you can manage or a company you can acquire. It's messy and exhausting and thankless most of the time. And when it gets hard, really hard, I need to know you'll still be here. Before Cale could respond, Benicio woke up with the sudden alertness of children everywhere, immediately sensing the tension between the adults. Are you fighting? He asked, his voice small and worried. No, sweetheart, Maya said quickly, forcing a smile. We're just talking about grown-up things. But Benicio wasn't fooled. At 4 years old, he'd already developed the hypervigilance that came from being the only child of a single mother, the ability to read moods and tension with uncomfortable accuracy. Are you going away? He asked Cale directly. The question pierced through all their adult complications and arguments, cutting straight to the heart of what really mattered. Not if I can help it, buddy, Cale said softly. But as he met Maya's eyes over their son's head, he saw doubt there and fear, and the weight of a single mother's protective instincts. Would love be enough to bridge the gap between their two worlds? Or were some differences too vast to overcome? The urgent buzzing of Cale's phone at 6:30 a.m. shattered the peaceful silence of his resort suite. He'd been awake for the past hour, standing on his balcony watching the sunrise and thinking about yesterday's argument with Maya. Her words had cut deeper than he cared to admit, mainly because there was truth in them he didn't want to face. Donovan, he answered tersely, recognizing his assistant's number. Mr. Donovan, thank God. I've been trying to reach you since midnight. Claire's voice was strained with the kind of panic that usually preceded corporate disasters. The Singapore deal is falling apart. The Yamamoto Group is pulling out and they're claiming breach of contract. Legal says we could be looking at a $200 million lawsuit if we don't get you to Tokyo by tomorrow morning. Cale closed his eyes, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility settling back onto his shoulders like a lead blanket. What happened? The prototype specifications were leaked to their competitors. Someone inside our organization gave them our proprietary navigation algorithms, and now Yamamoto is claiming we violated the exclusivity clause. That's impossible. Only 5 people had access to those files. 6, actually. Jessica Morrison still had clearance in the system from before her termination. Security flagged it this morning. She accessed the files 3 days ago. The name hit Cale like ice water. Jessica. Even 3 years after exposing her manipulation, which had taken him nearly 2 years to prove, she was still finding ways to destroy his life. Where is she now? We don't know. She cleared out her apartment and disappeared. But Mr. Donovan, the damage is done. If we don't salvage this deal, the board is going to have serious questions about your leadership. There are already whispers about a vote of no confidence. Cale's grip tightened on the phone. Donovan Marine Solutions was more than just his company. It was his legacy, built from nothing into a maritime technology empire. The thought of losing it, especially to Jessica's final act of revenge, made his stomach turn. Book me on the next flight to Tokyo, he said quietly. Already done. You leave Miami at 2 p.m. today. That gives you just enough time to... I'll be there. Cale ended the call and stood staring at the ocean, watching the waves crash against the shore with increasing violence as the morning wind picked up. 3 hours later, he found Maya and Benicio at their usual breakfast spot, but the easy atmosphere of previous mornings was gone. Maya looked up as he approached, and whatever she saw in his expression made her face fall. You're leaving, she said. It wasn't a question. Cale sat down heavily, unable to meet Benicio's confused gaze. There's a crisis with my company. If I don't handle it personally, I could lose everything I've built. But you promised to teach me how to dive today, Benicio said, his voice small and disappointed. "You said we were going to see the fishies." "I know, buddy. I'm so sorry." This is exactly the kind of thing that Cale stopped himself before he could say, adults have to deal with, recognizing it for the dismissal it would sound like. "That can't wait even one more day," Maya finished for him, her tone carefully neutral. "Apparently not." Cale's voice was bitter with frustration. "Someone I used to work with, someone who's caused problems before, sabotaged a major deal. If I don't fix it immediately, my company could face bankruptcy." Benicio didn't understand the business terminology, but he understood abandonment. "Are you coming back?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Cale looked at his son's face, seeing his own eyes looking back at him with a mixture of hope and resignation that no 4-year-old should have to wear. "Yes," he said firmly. "I'm coming back." "When?" Cale realized he didn't have an answer. Corporate crises were unpredictable. This could take days or weeks to resolve, depending on how badly Jessica had sabotaged things. "I don't know exactly, but I will come back." Maya's laugh was hollow. "Right on schedule. What's that supposed to mean?" "This." She gestured between them. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. The first real test of your commitment, and you're already choosing the company over your son. That's not fair. This isn't a choice. It's always a choice, Cale. You just have different priorities than you want to admit." The accusation stung because part of him wondered if she was right. Was he running back to the familiar territory of business because it was easier than navigating the complex emotions of instant fatherhood? "Mommy, why are you being mean to Mr. Cale?" Benicio asked, his voice wobbling with the distress children feel when the adults around them start fighting. Maya's expression softened immediately. "I'm not being mean, sweetheart. I'm just disappointed. Like when I promised to clean my room but watched TV instead?" The innocent comparison made both adults wince. "Yes, baby." Like that, Cale knelt beside Benicio's chair, bringing himself to the child's eye level. "Buddy, sometimes grown-ups have to do things they really don't want to do. This is one of those times for me. But I promise you, I will come back. And when I do, we'll go diving and build the biggest sand castle this beach has ever seen. Do you pinky promise?" Cale extended his little finger, wrapping it around Benicio's smaller one. "I pinky promise." But as he made the vow, he caught sight of Maya's expression, sad, resigned, and somehow unsurprised by this turn of events. It was the look of a woman who'd been expecting disappointment and found it exactly where she'd predicted. 2 hours later, Cale was throwing clothes into his suitcase with the mechanical efficiency of someone who'd packed for emergency flights countless times before. A knock at his door interrupted the process. "It's open," he called out, expecting room service. Instead, Maya walked in, closing the door behind her with a soft click. She looked around the suite, at the expensive luggage, the tablet open to flight information, the life of wealth and mobility that she'd briefly forgotten he lived. "I brought you something," she said, holding out a small wrapped package. Cale took it, curious. Inside was a crayon drawing, Benicio's artwork from the restaurant 3 nights ago, the one showing the 3 of them as a family by their sandcastle. "He wanted you to have it," Maya said softly. "For your office," he said, "so you wouldn't forget about us while you're working." The simple gesture hit harder than any accusation could have. Cale stared down at the childish drawing, seeing in those crooked stick figures everything he was walking away from. "I won't forget," he said hoarsely. "Won't you?" Maya moved closer, her voice gentle but probing. "When you're sitting in boardrooms making million-dollar decisions, when you're flying between cities and managing crises, will you really remember what it felt like to teach a 4-year-old how to float? Yes. What about when the crisis is over? When your company is safe and your empire is secure? Will you remember then? Or will this start to feel like a dream you had once? A brief vacation from your real life?" Cale set the drawing carefully on the dresser and turned to face her fully. "What do you want me to do, Maya? Let my company collapse? Let thousands of employees lose their jobs because I wanted to stay here and play in the sand? I want you to want to stay more than you want to go." The honesty in her voice stopped him cold. "I want you to find this impossible to leave," she continued. "I want you to be so torn between duty and desire that it keeps you up at night. I want leaving us to be the hardest thing you've ever done." "It is," he said quietly. "Is it? Or is part of you relieved? Part of you grateful for an excuse to run back to the world you understand, where the rules are clear and emotions don't complicate everything?" The question hung between them like an accusation and a plea rolled into one. Cale wanted to deny it, to protest that she was wrong, but the words stuck in his throat. "I've been a single mother for 4 years," Maya said when he didn't respond. "I've made every decision, handled every crisis, been the only parent Benicio has ever known. And it terrifies me to think about sharing that responsibility with someone who might disappear the moment things get difficult. I'm not disappearing, aren't you? This crisis of yours, how long will it take to resolve? A week? A month? And what happens when there's another crisis after that? And another after that? How long before the gaps between your visits get longer? Before the promises get vaguer? Before you become just another absent father who loves his child but loves his work more?" Each word was a small wound, precisely delivered. But underneath Maya's anger, Cale heard something else. Hope. Hope that he would prove her wrong, that he would fight harder to stay, that he would choose them over everything else. "What if I didn't go?" he said suddenly. "What? What if I stayed here? Let someone else handle the crisis. What if I chose you and Benicio over the company?" Maya stared at him, clearly not having expected this response. "You can't do that. You said it yourself. You could lose everything. What if I'm willing to risk it? For us? You barely know us. 3 days ago you didn't even know Ben existed. 3 days ago I didn't know what I was missing. Now I do." The silence stretched between them, heavy with possibility and fear. Finally, Maya shook her head. "No, I won't let you sacrifice your life's work for some romantic gesture. That kind of grand sacrifice always breeds resentment eventually. Go to Tokyo, Cale. Save your company. Prove to yourself that you can have both, a business empire and a family. And if I can't, if I have to choose, then I guess we'll know where your heart really lies." Before he could respond, she was gone, leaving him alone with the sound of his phone buzzing with increasingly urgent messages from his lawyers, his board members, his entire professional life demanding his attention. But all he could see was Benicio's drawing, 3 stick figures holding hands beside a crooked castle, and the faith of a 4-year-old boy who believed in pinky promises. As he picked up his suitcase and headed for the door, Cale made a decision that would change everything. But would it be enough to prove that some things matter more than business? Or would this be the beginning of the end, for a family that had barely begun to form? Cale stood in the Miami International Airport departure lounge, his boarding pass to Tokyo clutched in his hand as Flight 447 prepared for final boarding. Around him, business travelers hurried past with the focused intensity he recognized in himself. People for whom the next flight, the next deal, the next crisis was always the most important thing in the world. His phone buzzed constantly with updates from his legal team. The situation was worse than originally reported. Jessica hadn't just leaked the Singapore specifications, she'd also planted evidence suggesting Cale himself had approved the breach. The board was in emergency session and several major investors were already making noise about pulling out. "Final boarding call for Flight 447 to Tokyo," the gate agent announced. Cale took a step forward, then stopped. In his carry-on bag, carefully wrapped in a hotel towel, was Benicio's drawing. He pulled it out, staring at those 3 crooked stick figures for what felt like the 100th time in the past hour. "Sir, are you boarding?" The gate agent was looking at him expectantly. Cale looked at the boarding pass, then at the drawing, then at his phone buzzing with another urgent message from Tokyo. In that moment, he saw his future laid out in 2 very different paths. The familiar world of corporate warfare where he was respected, feared, and ultimately alone, or the uncertain territory of fatherhood where he was needed, loved, and completely terrified. "No," he said, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. "I'm not boarding." The gate agent blinked in confusion. "Sir, this is the last flight to Tokyo today. If you miss this—" "I understand." Cale was already walking away, pulling out his phone as he headed for the exit. He dialed Claire's number as he strode through the terminal. "Mr. Donovan? Please tell me you're on the plane. I'm not coming to Tokyo." The silence on the other end was deafening. Finally, Claire spoke, her voice carefully controlled. "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" "Handle the crisis remotely. Conference call the board, bring in the crisis management team, do whatever it takes. But I'm not leaving Florida. Sir, with all due respect, this isn't something that can be handled remotely. The Japanese delegation specifically requested your personal presence. Without it, we'll find another way. There's always another way." Cale was already hailing a taxi. "And Claire? I want Jessica Morrison found and arrested. Whatever she's done, there has to be evidence. Make it happen." "Mr. Donovan, the board is going to—" "The board works for me, not the other way around. Remind them of that." He hung up and gave the taxi driver the resort's address, his heart hammering as the magnitude of his decision sank in. He'd just potentially sacrificed a multi-billion-dollar empire for a stick figure drawing and the chance to teach his son how to dive. Either he was making the biggest mistake of his life, or he was finally getting his priorities straight. The taxi ride back to the resort felt both eternal and too short. With every mile, Cale's phone erupted with increasingly frantic calls from board members, investors, and lawyers. He ignored them all, focusing instead on what he would say to Maya and Benicio. By the time he reached the resort, word had apparently spread through his organization like wildfire. His phone showed 47 missed calls and countless urgent emails with subject lines like emergency board meeting and crisis escalation. Cale turned off the phone entirely. He found them at the beach, in the same spot where they'd built their first sandcastle together. Benicio was listlessly moving sand around with a plastic shovel, while Maya sat nearby, staring out at the ocean with the resigned expression of someone saying goodbye. They both looked up as he approached, confusion clear on their faces. "You missed your flight," Maya said. Not quite a question. "No," Cale replied, dropping his suitcase in the sand and sitting down next to Benicio. "I chose not to get on it." Benicio's face lit up like Christmas morning. "You came back. You kept your pinky promise." "I did, buddy, and I always will." But Maya was staring at him with something approaching alarm. "Cale, what did you do?" "I chose what matters most. Your company is just a company. This," he gestured to encompass the three of them, "is family, and I finally figured out which one I can't live without." Before Maya could respond, Benicio launched himself into Cale's arms with the unrestrained joy only children could express. "Does this mean you're staying forever and ever?" "It means I'm staying as long as you and your mom will have me," Cale said, meeting Maya's eyes over their son's head. "And then longer than that." But instead of the relief he'd expected to see in her face, Maya looked stricken. "You can't do this," she said quietly. "You can't throw away everything you've built for us. I won't let you. You don't get a say in this decision," Cale replied gently. "This is my choice to make. A choice you'll regret the moment reality sets in. When you lose your company, when your employees are out of work, when everything you've accomplished is destroyed, you'll blame us. Maybe not consciously, but you'll resent that we cost you your life's work. Will I? Or will I finally realize that I spent 15 years building an empire that means nothing if I have no one to share it with?" Maya stood up abruptly, pacing to the water's edge. This is exactly the kind of grand romantic gesture that sounds amazing in movies and destroys real relationships. You can't love someone by sacrificing everything else that makes you who you are. Cale gently disentangled himself from Benicio's embrace and followed her. What if who I am isn't defined by how much money I make or how many companies I own? What if who I am is defined by whether I can be the father my son deserves and the partner you need? "You don't know what I need," Maya said, but there was less conviction in her voice. "Then tell me." She turned to face him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I need someone who shows up, not just in the big moments but in the small ones. I need someone who remembers that Ben likes his sandwiches cut diagonally, and that he's afraid of thunder but loves lightning. I need someone who won't promise what he can't deliver. What if I promise to try? What if I promise to fail sometimes but never to give up? What if I promise to love both of you, more than I've ever loved anything in my life? And what if your company crashes and burns while you're here playing house with us? Then, I'll build something new, something better, something that doesn't require me to choose between success and the people I love." Before Maya could respond, Benicio appeared between them, tugging on both their hands. "Are you fighting again?" he asked, his voice worried. "We're not fighting, sweetheart," Maya said, kneeling to his level. "We're just figuring things out. Figuring out if Mr. Cale is going to be my real daddy instead of just my pretend one." The innocent question hit both adults like a physical blow, out of the mouths of babes. "Would you like that?" Cale asked carefully. "For me to be your real dad?" Benicio's nod was so enthusiastic it made his whole body bounce. "Yes. Then we could live together and you could read me bedtime stories and we could swim every day and build castles and you could teach me about boats and—" "Slow down there, speed racer," Maya laughed despite herself. "It's not quite that simple." "Why not?" Benicio asked with the logical directness of childhood. "We like each other. We have fun together. We're already a family. We just need to make it official." Over his head, Cale and Maya stared at each other, both thinking the same thing. When had their 4-year-old become the wisest person in the room? "It's complicated, baby," Maya said finally. No, it's not, Benicio replied with absolute certainty. You love each other. I can tell. And you both love me. That's not complicated. That's easy. Cale's phone, forgotten in his pocket, began ringing again, then again, and again, the sound of his old life demanding his attention even here, even now. He pulled it out, looked at the caller ID showing his board chairman's number, and without hesitation turned it off completely. Easy, he said, looking directly at Maya. Our son says it's easy. Cale, I know this is terrifying. Trust me, I'm scared too. I've never been anyone's father. I've never put someone else's needs before my own ambitions. I don't know if I'll be good at it, but I want to try. I want to try so badly it physically hurts. And if you fail? If you decide 6 months from now that the simple life isn't enough for you, then I'll have failed at the most important thing I've ever attempted. But Maya, what if I don't fail? What if this is exactly what I've been missing all along? What if everything I accomplished before was just practice for this? For being the man you and Benicio deserve? The silence stretched between them, broken only by the sound of waves and Benicio's humming as he returned to his sand construction project. Finally, Maya spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm scared. Good. So am I. Terrified parents probably make better decisions than overconfident ones. I've been alone for so long. I don't know how to share the responsibility. I don't know how to trust someone else with his heart. Then don't. Not yet. Let me earn it. Let me prove that I'm not going anywhere. That this isn't some temporary midlife crisis or romantic impulse. Give me the chance to show you that some things really are worth changing your whole life for. Maya looked at him for a long moment, then at their son, then back at him. My vacation ends tomorrow. I have to go back to Portland, back to my job. Ben starts preschool again next week. Then I guess I'm moving to Portland. You can't just watch me. But would Portland be ready for Cale Donovan? And more importantly, would his sacrifice prove to be the beginning of their new life together, or the end of everything he'd worked to build? 3 weeks later, Cale stood in the doorway of a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Portland's Hawthorne district, holding a single suitcase and feeling more out of place than he had in a Tokyo boardroom. The contrast between this cozy space and his Boston penthouse was jarring. Mismatched furniture, children's artwork covering the refrigerator, toys scattered across a living room that could fit inside his old office. But none of that mattered as much as the sight of Benicio racing toward him with arms outstretched. Cale, you really came. The boy launched himself into his father's arms with the uninhibited joy that had become Cale's new favorite sound. I told you I would, buddy. Pinky promises are sacred. Cale lifted his son high, spinning him around while trying not to knock over the precariously stacked books on the nearby coffee table. Maya emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel, her expression carefully neutral. How was your flight? Long, but worth it. Cale set Benicio down but kept one hand on the boy's shoulder, anchoring himself to this new reality. Thank you for letting me come. Well, you didn't exactly give me much choice, Maya replied, but there was warmth in her voice. When a billionaire decides to relocate to Portland for your son, it's hard to argue. Former billionaire, Cale corrected. The board voted me out yesterday. Apparently, abandoning a $200 million crisis for personal reasons is grounds for removal. Maya's face went pale. Cale, I'm so sorry. I never meant for... Don't. He held up a hand, his voice firm but gentle. This isn't your fault, this was my choice, and I'd make it again. Besides, I kept enough stock to be very comfortable, just not obscenely wealthy anymore. Daddy, what's obscenely? Benicio asked, having caught the one word that sounded interesting. It means too much of something, Maya answered quickly. Like too much ice cream. There's no such thing as too much ice cream, Benicio declared with 4-year-old authority. Spoken like a true philosopher, Cale laughed, then looked around the apartment again. So where am I staying? Please tell me you didn't expect me to figure that out myself, because hotel living gets old fast. Maya gestured toward the couch. That pulls out into a bed. It's not the Ritz, but it's perfect. No, it's not. It's cramped, and the neighbors upstairs have a baby who cries at 3 a.m., and Mrs. Patterson next door plays her TV too loud. But it's what we can afford, and, Maya, Cale's voice was soft but insistent. It's perfect because you and Ben are here. Everything else is just details. Over the next few days, Cale threw himself into learning the rhythms of their life with the same intensity he'd once applied to hostile takeovers. He memorized Benicio's schedule, preschool from 8 to 3, soccer practice on Tuesdays, library story time on Saturday mornings. He learned that the boy was fascinated by firefighters, terrified of automatic hand dryers in public restrooms, and capable of asking approximately 400 questions per hour. Why is the sky blue? Why do birds fly? Why can't I fly? Why do I have to eat vegetables? Why do vegetables taste yucky? Why? Because that's just how the world works, buddy, Kale said, buckling Benicio into his car seat for the drive to preschool. He'd bought a sensible Honda Civic, a far cry from his collection of luxury cars back in Boston, but Benicio loved it because it had cup holders perfectly sized for his juice boxes. But why does the world work that way? Kale paused, struck by the profundity of the question. You know what? That's a really good question. Maybe we can figure it out together. At Sunshine Academy Preschool, Kale found himself thrust into a world he'd never imagined existed. Other parents dropped off their children with efficient smiles and brief conversations about play dates and field trip permission slips. They were teachers and accountants, nurses and shop owners, people who lived in the real world, not the rarefied air of corporate boardrooms. You must be Benicio's dad, said a woman with paint-stained fingers and a warm smile. I'm Lindsay, Emma's mom. Ben talks about you all the time. You're the one who taught him to swim like a fish, right? That would be me, Kale replied, still adjusting to being identified as someone's father rather than as CEO of anything. Emma's been begging for swimming lessons ever since Ben told her about diving for treasure. Think you could teach a few more kids? I'd pay you, of course. The casual offer stopped Kale in his tracks. Here was a parent asking him to teach children to swim, not because he was rich or powerful, but because he was good with kids and Ben trusted him. I'd love to, he said, surprising himself with how much he meant it. That afternoon, Kale picked up Benicio from school and found his son practically vibrating with excitement. Guess what, Daddy? The word slipped out naturally, and both father and son froze. I mean, Kale, I'm sorry. I know you're not really my daddy yet because you and Mommy aren't married and, hey. Kale knelt down to Benicio's eye level right there in the school parking lot, not caring who was watching. I am your daddy. Biology makes that true, not a piece of paper. And if you want to call me Dad, or Daddy, or even just Kale, that's fine with me. Whatever feels right to you. Really? Really? I'm your father, and you're my son. That's never going to change, no matter what happens between your mom and me. Benicio's smile was radiant. Okay, Dad. Guess what happened at school today? As they drove home, Benicio chattered about his day, and Kale found himself smiling at the simple normalcy of it. No board meetings, no crisis calls, no life or death decisions about market strategies. Just a 4-year-old boy excited about finger painting and the fact that he'd successfully tied his own shoes for the first time. Did you tell Mom about the shoe thing? Kale asked as they pulled into the apartment complex parking lot. Not yet. I wanted to surprise her. But Dad, can you help me practice? I want to be really good at it before I show her. Of course, buddy. They spent 20 minutes in the hallway outside the apartment, Kale patiently guiding small fingers through the complex choreography of loops and pulls, while Benicio's tongue stuck out in concentration. I did it, Benicio finally shouted as the bow held. Mom! Mom! Come see what I learned. Maya emerged from the kitchen just as Benicio demonstrated his new skill, her face lighting up with pride and wonder. That's amazing, sweetheart. When did you learn to do that? Dad taught me. We've been practicing. Maya's eyes met Kale's over their son's head, something unreadable in her expression. That's really wonderful. Both of you. But later that evening, after Benicio was asleep, the conversation took a different turn. He called you Dad today, Maya said without preamble. They were sitting on the small balcony, sharing a bottle of wine Kale had brought back from his storage unit in Boston. Is that a problem? I don't know. Maybe. It feels fast. Maya, I am his father. We've established that. What's he supposed to call me? I know that. Logically, I know that. But emotionally, for 4 years, I was all he had. I was Mom and Dad and everything in between. And now suddenly there's this whole other parent and he's bonding with you so easily and I'm terrified. Terrified of what? Of being replaced. Of becoming less important. Of him loving you more because you're new and exciting and I'm just the boring mom who makes him eat his vegetables and brush his teeth. Kale set down his wine glass and turned to face her fully. Maya, look at me. That boy worships the ground you walk on. You're his whole world, his safe harbor, his everything. I'm not here to replace you or compete with you. I'm here to support you, to be part of the team. But what if nothing? You want to know what he told me today when we were practicing shoe tying? He said, I can't wait to show Mommy because she taught me everything else important, and now I can show her something new. You're not losing him to me, Maya. If anything, having me here might give you some of the support you've been doing without for too long. Maya was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the city lights. I've been alone for so long. I don't remember how to be part of a team. Then we'll figure it out together. All of us. What if we can't? What if we're too different, too damaged by what happened before? What if this whole thing is just a fantasy that falls apart the first time we have a real disagreement? Kale reached over and took her hand, intertwining their fingers in a gesture that felt both familiar and terrifyingly new. Then we'll figure that out too. But Maya, I need you to understand something. I didn't move across the country for a fantasy. I moved here for my family, for the chance to be part of something real and meaningful and messy and wonderful. And yes, it's scary as hell, but some things are worth being scared for. Even if it means giving up everything else. Everything else was just things, Maya. This is life. Before she could respond, a crash from inside the apartment sent them both rushing toward Benicio's room. They found him standing next to his overturned nightstand, tears streaming down his face. I had a bad dream, he sobbed. There were monsters and they were trying to take Dad away and I couldn't stop them. Without hesitation, both parents moved to comfort him, Maya gathering him into her arms while Kale knelt beside the bed. Hey, buddy. It was just a dream, Kale said softly. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. Promise? I promise. No monsters are strong enough to take me away from you and your mom. As they settled Benicio back into bed, taking turns reading from his favorite book about a brave little boat, Kale caught Maya watching him with something like wonder in her eyes. What? He whispered as they tiptoed out of the room. You're good at this, she said quietly. The parenting thing. It's like you were born for it. Maybe I was. Maybe I just needed the right teacher. But as they returned to the balcony, both of them were thinking the same thing. Was this fragile new family strong enough to weather the storms that were surely coming? Or would the weight of their complicated past prove too much for their uncertain future? 2 months into his new life in Portland, Kale had settled into a routine that would have been unimaginable to his former self. Mornings began at 6 with coffee and cartoons, followed by the complex choreography of getting a 4-year-old ready for school. Afternoons were spent at the community pool, where he'd started teaching swimming lessons to a growing group of neighborhood kids, and evenings involved homework supervision, dinner preparation, and bedtime stories. He was happier than he'd ever been, and it terrified him. Dad, watch this, Benicio called from the shallow end of the community pool, where he was demonstrating his newest skill, an underwater somersault that barely qualified as such but filled him with immense pride. That was amazing, buddy, Kale applauded genuinely, then turned to the group of parents watching from the poolside chairs. Okay, who's next for diving practice? Emma, Lindsay's daughter, raised her hand eagerly. Me. I want to dive like a dolphin. As Kale worked with the children, he caught snippets of conversation from the parents, discussions about mortgage rates, school fundraisers, weekend soccer games, normal life concerns that he was slowly learning to navigate. It was a far cry from leveraged buyouts and international shipping contracts, but somehow it felt more real, more meaningful. You know, when Lindsay first told me about the rich guy teaching kids to swim, I pictured something very different, said Marcus, a nurse at the local hospital whose twin boys were in Benicio's class. Rich guy? Kale looked up from where he was helping 7-year-old Tyler with his backstroke. Come on, man. The Honda doesn't fool anyone. Those are Armani swim trunks, and I've seen the watch you try to hide under your shirt. Plus, Ben mentioned your old house had an elevator. Kale felt his cheeks warm. He'd been trying so hard to fit into this community that he'd perhaps overcorrected, attempting to hide every trace of his former wealth. I used to have money, he said carefully. A lot of it, but I gave most of that up to be here. For Maya and Ben. For my family, yeah. Marcus studied him for a moment. Must have been some pretty serious money to walk away from. It was. But you can't hug a bank account or teach it to swim. No, I guess you can't. Marcus grinned. Well, for what it's worth, you made the right choice. I've never seen Maya this happy. She used to have this sadness in her eyes, you know? Like she was carrying the world on her shoulders. That's gone now. The observation stayed with Kale as he finished the lesson and headed home. Benicio chattering beside him about his plans to become a professional swimmer, and maybe also a firefighter and definitely a dragon trainer. Dad, do you miss your old house? Benicio asked suddenly as they pulled into their apartment complex. The question caught Kale off guard. Sometimes I miss certain things about it. The big bathtub, the view of the harbor, but I don't miss being lonely. Were you lonely? Even with all those people who worked for you? Especially with all those people who worked for you, buddy. Being surrounded by people who need things from you isn't the same as being with people who love you. Oh. Benicio processed this with the seriousness he applied to all adult concepts. Well, you don't have to be lonely anymore. You have me and Mommy. I do indeed. And that makes me luckier than any amount of money ever could. They found Maya in the kitchen, surrounded by grocery store flyers and calculator. Her laptop open to what appeared to be budget spreadsheets. The sight of her stressed expression immediately set off alarm bells in Kale's head. "Everything okay?" he asked, lifting Benicio onto the counter while Maya quickly closed the laptop. "Fine. Just trying to figure out next month's expenses." Her smile was too bright, the kind she used when she was trying to hide something. "Mommy, are we poor?" Benicio asked with the innocent directness that made all adults in his vicinity cringe. "No, sweetheart, we're not poor. We just have to be careful with our money." "Because Dad doesn't have his rich job anymore?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Kale saw Maya's face flush with embarrassment and frustration. "Ben, why don't you go play in your room for a bit while Mom and I talk?" Kale suggested gently. After Benicio reluctantly departed, Kale turned to Maya. "What's going on? And please don't tell me it's fine, because I can see it's not." Maya sank into one of the kitchen chairs, suddenly looking exhausted. The Patterson account pulled out. They decided to go with a larger firm for their campaign. That was 30% of my income. "Okay, so we'll figure something else out." "We?" Maya's voice was sharp. "Kale, this isn't your problem to solve. I've been managing my finances just fine for 4 years. But you don't have to manage them alone anymore. I'm here now. You're here as Ben's father, not as my financial savior." The words stung, mainly because they highlighted the undefined nature of their relationship. They were living together, co-parenting, sharing meals and conversations and increasingly intimate moments, but they'd never actually discussed what they were to each other. "So what am I then?" Kale asked. "Besides Ben's father, I mean. What are we, Maya?" She was quiet for a long moment, staring at the budget papers scattered across the table. "I don't know. I care about you. More than I should, probably. But I'm terrified of depending on you financially because that changes everything. It makes me beholden to you. And if things go wrong, you think I'd use money to manipulate you? I think money changes relationships whether people intend it to or not. When one person has it and the other doesn't, there's an imbalance. And I've worked too hard for my independence to give it up now." Kale sat down across from her, choosing his words carefully. "What if it wasn't about dependence? What if it was about partnership?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if instead of me giving you money, we started something together? A business that belongs to both of us that we build together." Maya looked up, curiosity replacing some of the defensiveness in her expression. "What kind of business?" "I've been thinking about it, actually. You're brilliant at marketing and creative strategy. I know operations and management. The swimming lessons have shown me there's a real need for quality children's programs in this area. What if we started a family activity center? Swimming, maybe some other programs, birthday parties, summer camps." "Kale, something like that would require significant startup capital, which I have. Not billionaire money anymore, but enough to get something like this off the ground. We'd be equal partners. Your expertise, my capital, our shared vision." Maya stared at him, clearly torn between interest and suspicion. "Why would you want to do that?" "Because I need something to do with my life besides just being Ben's dad. Don't get me wrong, being his father is the most important job I'll ever have. But I'm 36 years old and I'm not ready to retire. And because working with you, building something with you, sounds like the best job in the world. And if our personal relationship goes south, if we can't make this family thing work, what happens to the business? Then we'll figure it out like adults. We'll write up partnership agreements, we'll protect both our interests, we'll be smart about it. But Maya, what if instead of planning for failure, we planned for success?" Before Maya could respond, Benicio reappeared in the kitchen doorway, his face scrunched with worry. "Are you fighting about money?" "Tommy's parents fight about money, and then his dad moved out." Both adults immediately shifted into reassurance mode, but Benicio's fear highlighted the delicate balance they were trying to maintain. "We're not fighting, sweetheart," Maya said, pulling him onto her lap. "We're just talking about grown-up things." "Good, because I don't want Dad to move out. I like having him here. He makes really good pancakes and he knows all the best bedtime stories." I'm not going anywhere, buddy, Kale assured him. Your mom and I are just trying to figure out some business stuff. Like a job? Maybe. Would you like it if Mom and I worked together? Benicio's face lit up. Yes. Then you could both pick me up from school and we could all have lunch together and maybe I could help with the work sometimes. The simple enthusiasm in their son's voice seemed to cut through all the complications the adults had been creating. Maya looked at Kale, something shifting in her expression. Equal partners? She asked. Equal partners. Equal risk. Equal reward. Equal say in all decisions. And if I hate your ideas, then we fight about them like business partners do, and hopefully find compromises that make us both happy. Maya was quiet for a long moment, clearly weighing the possibilities against the risks. Finally, she smiled, the first genuine smile Kale had seen from her all week. I have some ideas about the activity center concept, she said, but they're bigger than just swimming lessons. I'm listening. What if we created something more comprehensive? Not just activities for kids, but resources for families. Parenting classes, support groups, maybe even childcare services for single parents who need help. Something that builds community, not just profits. Kale felt something click into place. The same feeling he used to get when a business deal was about to come together perfectly. But this was different. Better. This wasn't just about money or success. This was about building something meaningful. That's brilliant, he said. That's exactly what this community needs. You really think we could make it work? I think we could make anything work if we do it together. The moment was interrupted by Kale's phone ringing. He glanced at the caller ID and felt his blood run cold. Who is it? Maya asked, noticing his expression. My lawyer, Kale answered reluctantly. David, what's wrong now? Kale, we found Jessica Morrison. Good. I assume she's been arrested? That's the problem. She's not just running from the law, she's 6 months pregnant and she's claiming the baby is yours. The words hit Kale like a physical blow. Across the table, he watched Maya's face go white as she processed the implications of what she could hear through the phone. That's impossible, Kale said, his voice carefully controlled. She says it happened the night of the company party, the night she drugged you. She's claiming that while you don't remember what happened, something did happen between you two. Kale closed his eyes, feeling his carefully rebuilt world starting to crumble around him. David, run a DNA test. Run 10 DNA tests. Whatever it takes to prove she's lying. We will. But Kale, she's also leaked this story to the press. It's going to be everywhere by morning. As Kale hung up the phone, he looked at Maya's stricken face and realized that just when they'd found their footing, the past was about to tear their future apart once again. But would this new crisis destroy the family they were building? Or would it finally force them to decide what they were truly willing to fight for? The next morning brought a media storm that turned their quiet Portland life upside down. Kale woke to find reporters camped outside their apartment complex, cameras trained on every entrance and exit. The headlines were everywhere. Billionaire's secret baby scandal, and disgraced CEO's pregnant mistress tells all. Daddy, why are there people with cameras outside? Benicio asked, pressing his nose to the living room window while Maya frantically closed all the blinds. Just some confused people, buddy. They'll go away soon, Kale said, though he wasn't sure he believed it himself. Maya hadn't spoken to him since the phone call the night before. She'd listened in stony silence as he'd tried to explain, had nodded when he'd insisted the baby couldn't possibly be his, and then had retreated to her bedroom without another word. This morning, she moved around the apartment like he was invisible, communicating only through terse instructions about keeping Benicio away from the windows. Maya, we need to talk about this, Kale said quietly while Benicio was distracted by his toy cars. Do we? Because it seems like you've said everything that matters. You don't remember what happened that night. Jessica claims something did happen, and now there's going to be a baby that may or may not be yours. What exactly is there to discuss? The fact that I'm telling you the truth. The fact that I would never ever cheat on you. Not 5 years ago, not now, not ever. But you don't know, do you? Maya's voice was deadly calm. You don't actually remember what happened that night. She drugged you. You said so yourself. So you can't be sure nothing happened. The accuracy of her statement hit like a physical blow. Kale had spent 5 years convinced that nothing sexual had occurred between him and Jessica that night. But if he was being completely honest, he couldn't be certain. The hours between arriving at the party and waking up in his own bed were largely blank. You're right, he admitted quietly. I can't be 100% certain. But Maya, everything I know about myself, everything I believe about who I am, tells me that I would never have willingly been with her. Drugged or not, unconscious or not, it would have been assault, not consensual sex. And if the DNA test proves otherwise, then we'll deal with that when it happens. But until then, I need you to trust me. I need you to believe that the man you're building a life with wouldn't lie to you about something this important. Maya was quiet for a long moment, staring out through a crack in the blinds at the media circus outside. You want to know what's really killing me about this? It's not the possibility that you slept with her. It's the timing. What do you mean? We were just talking about starting a business together, about building something as partners. I was finally starting to believe that maybe we could make this work, that maybe I could trust you completely. And then this happens, and suddenly I'm right back where I was 5 years ago, wondering what's true and what's a lie. This isn't the same situation, isn't it? 5 years ago, there were photos that seemed to prove you were cheating. You claimed you were innocent, that it was all Jessica's manipulation. I didn't believe you then, and I left. Now there's a pregnancy that seems to prove you slept with her. You're claiming you're innocent, that it's all Jessica's manipulation. How is this any different? Cale felt the truth of her words settle in his chest like a weight. From her perspective, it was the same pattern repeating itself. Jessica's accusations, photographic or biological evidence, and his protestations of innocence. Because this time, you know who Jessica really is, he said finally. This time you know she's capable of elaborate lies and manipulation. This time you have more information to base your decision on. Do I? Or am I just seeing what I want to see because I've already invested so much in this relationship? Before Cale could respond, his phone rang. His lawyer again. David, please tell me you have good news. Mixed news. Jessica agreed to an immediate DNA test, which suggests she's confident in her claims. But I've been digging into her activities over the past year, and there's something strange here. Strange how? She's been receiving regular payments from an offshore account, significant amounts, and the timing coincides with her pregnancy announcement. Cale felt a spark of hope. Someone's paying her to make these claims. It's possible. But Cale, there's something else. I've been in touch with the hospital where she's receiving prenatal care. According to their records, the conception date aligns perfectly with that night at your company party. The hope died as quickly as it had appeared. So the timing works for her story. Unfortunately, yes. We'll have the DNA results in 48 hours, but from a legal standpoint, her case is getting stronger, not weaker. After hanging up, Cale found Maya in the kitchen, mechanically packing Benicio's lunch for school. Her movements were precise, controlled, but he could see the tension in every line of her body. Let me take him to school today, he offered. The reporters won't be expecting that. No, her voice was sharp. I don't want him around any of this media circus, and I don't want you putting him at risk just to prove some point about being a good father. That's not what I'm trying to do. Then what are you trying to do, Cale? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're trying to maintain normalcy in a situation that is anything but normal. I'm trying to protect my family, both of my children, if it turns out. Don't. Maya spun around, her eyes blazing. Don't you dare refer to that woman's baby as your child when you're standing in the home you share with your actual child. Benicio doesn't need to hear you talking about potential siblings who might exist because of your past mistakes. It wasn't a mistake, it was an assault. Was it? Or is that just what you need to believe to live with yourself? The accusation hung between them like a slap. Cale stared at her, seeing in her face the same doubt and pain he'd glimpsed 5 years ago when their relationship had first fallen apart. You don't believe me, he said quietly. I want to believe you. God, I want to believe you so badly it hurts. But Cale, I have to protect myself. I have to protect Ben. And the pattern here, it's too familiar. What does that mean? It means I think you should stay somewhere else while this gets sorted out. The words hit him like a physical blow. You're kicking me out. I'm asking you to give us some space. Give me time to think clearly without the pressure of trying to make this work while everything's falling apart around us. And Ben? What do I tell him when I disappear again? Tell him the truth that sometimes adults need time to figure things out. He'll think I'm abandoning him. He'll think I'm just like every other man who's walked away when things got complicated. Maybe you are. The cruel accuracy of the statement left them both stunned. Maya's hand flew to her mouth as if she could take back the words, but the damage was already done. Maya, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. I'm scared and angry and I don't know how to handle this. Then let's handle it together. That's what partners do. They face the hard stuff as a team. But we're not really partners, are we? Not legally, not officially. We're just two people trying to make the best of a complicated situation for our son's sake. Is that really what you think this is? I don't know what to think anymore. They were interrupted by Benicio running into the kitchen, fully dressed for school and bubbling with his usual morning energy. Ready, Mommy? Oh, and Dad, I told my class you're going to teach Emma's birthday party how to swim next weekend. You're still going to do that, right? The innocent question highlighted the impossible position they were all in. Kale looked at Maya, seeing in her face the same struggle he was feeling, how to protect their son from adult complications while still being honest with him. We'll see, buddy, Kale said carefully. There might be some things I need to take care of first. What kind of things? Grown-up things. Nothing for you to worry about. But Benicio was 4, not stupid. He looked between his parents, picking up on the tension despite their attempts to hide it. Are you sad about something, Dad? A little bit, yeah. Is it because of the people with cameras? They made Mommy sad too. Sort of, buddy. Well, maybe you and Mommy should hug it out. That's what you told me to do when I was sad about Tommy taking my truck. The simple wisdom nearly broke both their hearts. Kale looked at Maya, seeing tears she was trying not to shed, seeing the woman he loved struggling with the same impossible situation he was facing. Sometimes grown-up problems are more complicated than kid problems, Maya said gently. But hugging still helps, right? Before either parent could respond, Kale's phone buzzed with a text message, then another, then a flood of them as the story apparently broke wider. I need to go, he said quietly, seeing Maya's face close off again. I need to talk to my lawyer, figure out how to handle the media, try to contain this before it gets worse. And we need to get Ben to school and try to maintain some semblance of normal life for him. They stood there for a moment, 3 feet apart but feeling like miles, while their son looked between them with growing confusion and worry. I'll call you tonight, Kale said. Okay. And Maya, whatever you're thinking, whatever you're feeling about all this, I love you. I love our family. And I'm going to fight for both of you, regardless of what Jessica's agenda is or what those DNA results say. She nodded, not trusting her voice, and he was gone, leaving her alone with their son and the weight of impossible decisions. But as Benicio's small hand slipped into hers and he asked, Is Dad coming back tonight? Maya realized that the hardest part wasn't deciding whether to trust Kale again. The hardest part was admitting that she was terrified of losing him just when she'd finally found the courage to love him completely. Would the truth set them free? Or would Jessica's final manipulation destroy the family that had survived so much already? Kale spent 3 days in a sterile downtown hotel room, fielding calls from lawyers and watching his life dissected on every news channel. The DNA results were due that afternoon, and each passing hour felt like a countdown to either vindication or complete destruction. His phone buzzed with a text from Maya. Ben keeps asking when you're coming home. I don't know what to tell him. The message was the first communication he'd received from her since leaving the apartment, and the word home in it gave him more hope than he probably deserved. He was about to respond when another call came in from David. I found something, his lawyer said without preamble. Something big. The DNA results? Better. I found out who's been paying Jessica. David's voice was tight with excitement. It's Harrison Webb. Kale felt the blood drain from his face. Harrison Webb was the board member who'd led the vote to remove him as CEO, a man who'd been quietly maneuvering for control of Donovan Marine Solutions for years. Harrison? But why would he? Think about it, Kale. With you gone and the company in chaos, he was positioned to take over. But when you walked away voluntarily and maintained your stock holdings, that complicated his plans. Jessica's accusations served 2 purposes. They destroy your reputation completely, making a comeback impossible, and they provide grounds for a morality clause that could force you to sell your remaining shares. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. He's been planning this from the beginning. It gets worse. I've been digging into Jessica's medical records, don't ask how, and the conception date she's been claiming. It's off by 3 weeks. The real conception date puts the father as someone she was seeing regularly during that time period. Do we know who? Harrison's son, Marcus. Apparently they've been in an on and off relationship for over a year. She's carrying his baby, not yours. Kale sank into the hotel room chair, overwhelmed by relief and rage in equal measure. So this whole thing is an elaborate frame job designed to destroy you personally and professionally. I've got the medical records, the bank transfers, even some text messages between Jessica and Marcus discussing the plan. We have everything we need to prove you're innocent. How long before we can go public with this? I'm calling a press conference for 6 p.m. But Kale, I think you should tell Maya first. This is going to be all over the news, and she deserves to hear it from you." An hour later, Cale stood outside the apartment he'd been calling home for 3 months, his heart hammering as he knocked on the door he'd once entered freely. Maya opened it, her face carefully neutral. Behind her, he could see Benicio playing on the living room floor, building an elaborate castle out of blocks. "The DNA results came back," he said without preamble. Her face went pale. "And? I'm not the father. But that's not the important part." "Maya, can I come in? There's a lot I need to tell you." She stepped aside and he walked into the space that felt more like home than any mansion he'd ever owned. Benicio looked up from his blocks and squealed with delight. "Dad, you came back. I knew you would." He launched himself into Cale's arms with the unquestioning faith that only children possessed. "I told you I always would, didn't I?" Cale said, holding his son close and breathing in the familiar scent of childhood, fruit snacks and sunshine and innocence. Over Benicio's head, he met Maya's eyes. "Can we talk? Privately?" She nodded toward the bedroom, and after settling Benicio back with his blocks and promising to help finish the castle soon, they retreated to the small space that had become their sanctuary. "You were right to be suspicious," Cale began, "but not about what you thought. This whole thing was orchestrated by Harrison Webb. Jessica's been working for him." "What?" "The baby is real, but it's not mine. It's Harrison's son's. They've been planning this for months, maybe longer. The goal was to destroy my reputation so completely that I'd be forced to sell my remaining stock in the company." As he explained everything David had uncovered, Cale watched Maya's expression cycle through disbelief, understanding, and finally, fury. "So she drugged you, destroyed our relationship 5 years ago, and now she was trying to destroy our family for money." Maya's voice was deadly quiet. "That's about the size of it, yeah. And I made you leave. I doubted you again. Just like 5 years ago, I immediately assumed the worst instead of trusting you. Maya, you had every right to be suspicious. From your perspective, no." She held up a hand, stopping him. "I can't keep using the past as an excuse to hurt you in the present. You told me the truth 5 years ago and I didn't believe you. You told me the truth this week and I still didn't believe you. At some point, this isn't about Jessica's manipulation anymore. It's about my inability to trust the man I love." The word hung in the air between them like a bridge neither was sure was safe to cross. "You love me?" Cale asked quietly. "Of course I love you. I've been in love with you for 5 years, even when I thought I hated you. Why do you think this hurt so much? Why do you think I was so scared? Because you thought I was going to abandon you again. Because I thought I was an idiot for believing that this time could be different. Because I thought I'd set myself up to be hurt by the same man in the same way twice." Tears were streaming down her face now. "I'm so sorry, Cale. I'm sorry I didn't trust you. I'm sorry I made you leave when you needed us most. I'm sorry I keep punishing you for things that Jessica did." Cale reached for her, pulling her into his arms as she broke down completely. "Hey, it's okay, we're okay. This is what Jessica was counting on, that the past would poison the present, but it doesn't have to. We can choose to learn from this instead of letting it destroy us. How? How do we move forward when I clearly can't handle crisis without falling apart? We move forward by making a choice. Right here, right now. Do we let fear win, or do we decide that our love is stronger than other people's attempts to destroy it?" Maya pulled back to look at him, seeing in his eyes the same vulnerability she felt. "I choose love. I choose us. I choose to trust you, even when it's scary. Even when my past comes back to haunt us. Especially then, because your past brought you to me, and it gave us Ben, the good and the bad. It's all part of the story that led us here." They were interrupted by a small voice from the doorway. "Are you crying because you're happy or because you're sad?" Benicio stood there in his pajamas, his hair sticking up at odd angles, looking worried. "Happy," Maya said, wiping her eyes. "Definitely happy. Does that mean Dad doesn't have to sleep in the hotel anymore?" "How did you know I was sleeping in a hotel?" Cale asked, surprised. "I heard Mommy talking to Aunt Lisa on the phone. She said she made a mistake and she missed you and she was scared you were going to decide we were too much trouble." The innocent eavesdropping revelation made both adults wince. They'd tried so hard to protect him from their adult problems, but children absorbed everything. "Ben, come here," Cale said, sitting on the edge of the bed and lifting his son onto his lap. "I need you to understand something very important. No matter what happens between your mom and me, whether we're fighting or scared or confused, I will never ever think you're too much trouble. You are the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I will always fight to be part of your life. Always. Even if you and Mommy can't fix your grown-up problems, even then, you are my son forever no matter what." And Mommy? Kale looked at Maya, seeing her nod encouragingly. I love your mommy very much. And we're going to work very hard to fix our problems and be a real family. A real family like the ones in my picture books? With a mommy and daddy who live together and love each other? Exactly like that, Maya said softly. If that's what you want. That's what I want for my birthday and for Christmas and for every day. Then that's what you'll get, Kale promised. But buddy, it might take some time to figure out all the details. Grown-up relationships are complicated. They don't have to be, Benicio said with the wisdom of childhood. You love each other. I love both of you. We have fun together. That's not complicated. That's easy. Looking at his son's earnest face, Kale realized the 4-year-old was right. They'd been making it complicated, but the foundation was simple. Love, commitment, and the choice to keep choosing each other every day. You know what, buddy? You're absolutely right. It is easy. Kale's phone buzzed with a text from David. Press conference moved to 7 p.m. Thought you'd want time with your family first. What's that? Maya asked, noticing his smile as he read the message. My lawyer. The whole story's going public tonight. Jessica's lies, Harrison's manipulation, all of it. By tomorrow morning, everyone will know the truth. And then what? Then we decide what we want our life to look like. The 3 of us. Together. What about your company? Will you try to get it back? Kale considered the question seriously. Maybe. Or maybe we start something new. Something that belongs to us, that we build together. Something that puts family first. Always. The activity center idea? Among other things. I have some thoughts about expanding the concept. Maya smiled, and for the first time in days, it reached her eyes. I'd like to hear them. Tomorrow, Kale said, gathering both Maya and Benicio into his arms. Tonight I just want to be home with my family. As they settled onto the bed together, Benicio between them, the little boy looked up at both his parents with satisfaction. See? I told you it was easy. But would their hard-won happiness survive the final confrontation with the people who'd tried to destroy them? Or was this just the calm before an even bigger storm? 6 months later, Kale stood in the main hall of what would soon become Portland's newest family activity center, watching Maya direct the installation crew with the same precision she'd once applied to marketing campaigns. The space was transforming before their eyes. What had been an abandoned warehouse was now becoming a bright, welcoming environment, where families could learn, play, and grow together. Dad, look, Benicio called from across the room, where he was helping by organizing pool noodles into color-coordinated piles. I made a rainbow. That's beautiful, buddy, Kale replied, still marveling at how naturally the word dad came to both of them now. The press conference 6 months ago had cleared Kale's name completely. Jessica and Harrison Webb were both facing fraud charges, and Donovan Marine Solutions was in shambles. Exactly as Harrison had planned, except he'd destroyed himself in the process rather than taking over a thriving company. The board had begged Kale to return as CEO, offering him unprecedented control and compensation. He'd turned them down. The pool installation team will be here Monday, Maya said, approaching with a clipboard and paint smudges on her cheek that somehow made her even more beautiful than usual. And the insurance inspector signed off on everything this morning. So we're really doing this, Kale said, putting his arms around her from behind and looking out at their dream taking shape. Having second thoughts? About the business, never about us? He turned her in his arms, looking down into the green eyes that had captivated him 7 years ago and still took his breath away every day. Never about us. Even though I'm a mess? Even though I panic and doubt everything when things get hard? Especially because of those things. Perfect people are boring. I fell in love with a complicated, brilliant, stubborn woman who challenges me to be better than I knew I could be. Flattery will get you everywhere. Maya laughed, but her eyes were serious. I love you, Kale. I love the life we're building, the family we've become. But there's something I need to tell you. The serious tone made Kale's heart skip. What is it? I'm pregnant. The words hit him like a lightning bolt. He stared at her face, searching for any sign of uncertainty or fear, but found only joy and nervous excitement. Pregnant, he repeated slowly, as in we're having a baby. As in, Benicio's going to be a big brother. When? 7 months. I found out yesterday, but I wanted to wait until we were here, in our place, to tell you. Kale's response was to lift her off her feet and spin her around, his laughter echoing through the empty space. We're having a baby. Are we happy about this? Maya asked breathlessly when he set her down. Are you kidding me? I'm ecstatic. I'm terrified. He paused, overwhelmed by the magnitude of emotion. I'm grateful. So incredibly grateful that I get to do this with you from the beginning this time. Mommy? Dad? Why are you dancing? Benicio had abandoned his pool noodles and was standing nearby, his head tilted in curiosity. Come here, champion, Kale said, kneeling down to Benicio's level while keeping one arm around Maya. We have some news for you. Good news or grown-up news? The best news, Maya said, kneeling beside Kale. You're going to have a little brother or sister. Benicio's eyes went wide. Really? Like, a real baby? A real baby, Kale confirmed. What do you think about that? I think, Benicio paused with the seriousness he applied to all major decisions. I think I'm going to be the best big brother ever. Can I teach the baby how to swim? Absolutely, Maya laughed. But you'll have to wait a little while. Babies can't swim right away. That's okay. I can wait. I'm very patient now. He looked between his parents with satisfaction. This is going to be the best family in the whole world. Before either parent could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed through the space. They turned to see David, Kale's lawyer, approaching with someone Kale didn't recognize. A tall woman in an expensive suit carrying a briefcase. Kale, sorry to interrupt, David said, his expression serious. But there's something you need to know. This is Sarah Mitchell from the prosecutor's office. The woman stepped forward, her demeanor professional but not unsympathetic. Mr. Donovan, I wanted to update you personally on the case against Jessica Morrison and Harrison Webb. Kale instinctively moved closer to Maya, creating a protective barrier around their family. What about them? Harrison Webb was found guilty on all counts of fraud and conspiracy. He'll be serving 15 years in federal prison. But Jessica, she paused, clearly uncomfortable. Jessica Morrison died by suicide 3 days ago in county lockup. She left behind a full confession detailing everything. The drugging 5 years ago, the fake pregnancy claims, the payments from Webb, all of it. The news hit like a physical blow. Despite everything Jessica had done, despite the pain she'd caused, the idea of her choosing such a desperate end was sobering. What about her baby? Maya asked quietly. Born healthy 6 weeks ago. The father, Marcus Webb, has taken full custody. He was apparently unaware of his father's involvement in the scheme. Kale absorbed this information, feeling a complex mix of closure and sadness. So it's really over. Completely over. Your name is fully cleared, and there won't be any further legal proceedings. You're free to move forward with your lives. After the lawyer left, the three of them stood together in the quiet space, processing the weight of everything that had led them to this moment. Are you okay? Maya asked, studying Kale's face. I feel sorry for her, he admitted. I know that's probably stupid given everything she did, but she was clearly struggling with things I can't even imagine. It's not stupid. It's compassionate. It's one of the things I love about you. Daddy, what's suicide? Benicio asked with the direct curiosity that made all adult conversations more complex. Kale and Maya exchanged a look. How do you explain such darkness to a child who sees the world in terms of swimming lessons and sandbox castles? Sometimes grown-ups have problems that feel too big to handle, Maya said carefully, and sometimes they make very sad choices because they can't see any other way. But there's always another way, right? There's always someone to help? Yes, buddy. There's always someone to help. That's why families are so important. We help each other through the hard times, like how you and Mommy helped each other when you were sad about the mean lady. Exactly like that, Kale said, pulling his son into a hug. Families stick together. As the afternoon sun streamed through the skylights of their future activity center, painting everything in golden light, Kale looked around at what they'd accomplished. Not just the business, though that was going to be amazing, but the life they'd built together, the trust they'd learned to maintain even when it was hard, the love they'd chosen even when fear told them to run. I have an idea, he said suddenly. Uh-oh, Maya teased. Your ideas tend to be life-changing. What if we got married? Right here, right now? What? Maya stared at him, clearly not having expected this. Think about it. This is our place, the first thing we built together. Our son is here. We just found out we're having another baby. And after everything we've been through, after all the delays and obstacles and other people trying to keep us apart, I don't want to wait another day to make you my wife. Kale, we can't just get married right now. We need a license, an officiant, witnesses. David's still in the parking lot making phone calls. He's licensed to perform marriages in Oregon, Did that himself after his third divorce, figured he might as well be able to marry people since he was so good at helping them get divorced. And as for witnesses, he gestured around the space. We've got construction workers, delivery guys, and our son. How much more perfect could it get? You're serious about this? Completely serious. Maya LeClaire, I have loved you for 7 years. I have waited for you, fought for you, changed my entire life to be worthy of you. I want to marry you in this space that represents our future, with our children present, surrounded by the people who are helping us build something beautiful. I want our story to have a happy ending that starts today. But I'm covered in paint, and you're wearing work clothes, and I don't have a dress. You're beautiful, exactly as you are. And this isn't about the dress or the decorations. This is about us choosing each other, making a promise in front of our family. Maya looked around the space, seeing it through his eyes, not as an unfinished construction project, but as the symbol of everything they'd overcome to get here. What do you think, Ben? She asked their son. Should Daddy and I get married right here in our special place? Yes, Benicio shouted with enthusiasm. And then we can have cake, and dancing, and I can wear my good shoes. You heard the man, Cale said, grinning. He wants cake and dancing. You know what? Yes, Maya said suddenly, her face lighting up with joy. Yes, let's get married. Let's start our forever right here, right now in this place we built together. An hour later, surrounded by curious construction workers and delivery personnel who'd agreed to serve as witnesses, with David officiating and Benicio serving as ring bearer, with rings hastily purchased from a nearby jewelry store, Cale and Maya stood facing each other in the center of their future business. This is highly irregular, David said, adjusting his tie and looking both amused and nervous. But given everything you two have been through, I think irregular is probably appropriate. Dearly beloved, he began, then paused. Actually, you know what? Forget the formal stuff. Cale, Maya, you've already proven your commitment to each other in ways that matter more than any ceremony. You've chosen each other through betrayal and doubt. You've fought for your love when it would have been easier to give up. You've built a family and a future together. So instead of me telling you what marriage means, why don't you tell each other what this moment means to you? Cale took Maya's hands, looking into her eyes as if they were the only two people in the world. Maya, 7 years ago, I fell in love with a woman who was brave enough to challenge me, smart enough to see through my defenses, and strong enough to walk away when she thought I'd betrayed her. 5 years ago, I lost you, and I spent every day since then trying to become the man you deserved. 6 months ago, I found you again, and you gave me the greatest gift imaginable, the chance to be a father to our son and a partner to you. Today, I'm promising you that I will never stop choosing you. I will never stop fighting for our family. I will never stop loving you with everything I have. You are my heart, my home, my forever. Maya was crying openly now, but her voice was strong and clear. Cale, you turned your entire world upside down for me and Ben. You gave up everything you'd built to be part of our small, complicated life. You taught me that love isn't just a feeling. It's a choice you make every day. You've shown me what it means to be truly partnered with someone, to have someone who will stand with you no matter what storms come. And now you've given me another baby, another chance to build something beautiful together. I promise to trust you even when my fears tell me not to. I promise to choose love over doubt, hope over cynicism, us over anything else the world tries to throw at us. You are my partner, my love, my family. Do you have rings? David asked. They exchanged simple bands, nothing fancy or elaborate, but perfect for this moment. Then, by the power vested in me by the state of Oregon, and witnessed by this unique assembly, David gestured to their unconventional wedding party, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Cale, you may kiss your bride. The kiss was interrupted by Benicio's cheering and the applause of their makeshift congregation. When they broke apart, both were laughing through their tears. So, Maya said, looking around at the space that was now forever marked as the place where they'd become a family, in the truest sense. What do we do now? Now, Cale said, scooping up Benicio with one arm and pulling his wife close with the other. We build everything we've ever dreamed of, together. As the sun set over Portland, casting their activity center in warm light, the newest Mr. and Mrs. Donovan stood surrounded by the evidence of dreams becoming reality, the business they'd created as partners, the son who'd brought them together, the baby growing inside Maya that represented their faith in the future, and the love that had survived everything the world had thrown at it. It had taken 7 years, 2 separations, countless obstacles, and the machinations of people determined to destroy them, but they'd finally gotten their happy ending, and this time nothing would ever tear them apart again. 2 years later, the Donovan Family Activity Center buzzed with the joyful chaos of a Saturday morning. Children's laughter echoed from the pool area where Cale was teaching a group of 6-year-olds advanced swimming techniques, while in the main hall, Maya led a Mommy and Me yoga class for new parents struggling to find balance in their changed lives. From her office overlooking the activity floor, Maya paused in her work on the center's expansion plans to watch her husband demonstrate proper diving form. At 38, he moved through the water with the same confidence he'd once brought to boardrooms, but there was something different now, a lightness, a genuine joy that had been missing during his corporate years. At 34, Maya had found her own confidence too, no longer the uncertain woman who'd once doubted her worth. "Daddy's really good at swimming," said a small voice behind her. Maya turned to find 6-year-old Benicio standing in the doorway, holding the hand of his 18-month-old sister, Isabella. Both children had inherited their father's dark hair and their mother's green eyes, creating a perfect blend of their parents' best features. "Yes, he is," Maya agreed, lifting Isabella onto her hip, while Benicio climbed into the chair beside her desk. "Remember when he first taught you? At the resort in Florida," Benicio said with the precision of a child who'd heard this family story many times. "You cried when you saw him because you thought he was just pretend, but then you found out he was real." "Something like that," Maya laughed. The story had been simplified over the years, edited for young ears, but the core truth remained. Sometimes the most important things in life come disguised as coincidences. "Mama! Dada!" Isabella pointed toward the pool, where Cale had spotted them through the glass and was waving enthusiastically while maintaining his demonstration. "Yes, sweetheart. That's Daddy being silly," Maya said, waving back. "Just like always." The morning progressed with the comfortable rhythm they'd established over the past 2 years. Cale finished his swimming lessons and transitioned to leading a father-son sports class, while Maya managed the business side of operations and supervised the volunteer program they'd developed for single parents needing childcare support. At lunch, the family gathered in the small cafe area of the center, sharing sandwiches and watching the community they'd helped create flourish around them. Local families had embraced the center beyond their wildest dreams, and they'd recently been approached about franchising the concept to other cities. "So, Portland City Council officially approved the second location," Maya said, reviewing her notes from the morning's phone calls. "Construction can start next spring." 2 locations, Cale mused, cutting Isabella's sandwich into the tiny pieces she preferred. "Remember when this was just a crazy idea we discussed on your apartment balcony? I remember you being terrified I was going to say no to the whole business partnership thing," Maya teased. "I was terrified you were going to say no to a lot of things," Cale replied, meeting her eyes across the table with a look that still made her heart skip after all these years. "Daddy, tell me the story about how you decided to love us more than money," Benicio requested, settling into his father's lap with the casual confidence of a child who'd never doubted his place in the world. It was his favorite story, requested at least twice a week, and Cale had perfected the telling over time. "Well," Cale began, launching into the familiar narrative, "there was once a man who thought the most important thing in the world was building a big, successful company." As he spoke, Maya watched their son's face light up with interest, the same way it had hundreds of times before. But today, something about the moment felt particularly significant. Maybe it was the afternoon light streaming through the skylights, illuminating their small family gathered around a simple table in the business they'd built together. Maybe it was the sight of Isabella contentedly babbling to herself while playing with her toy blocks. Or maybe it was the realization that this ordinary Saturday afternoon represented everything she'd ever dreamed of, but hadn't dared to hope for. And so the man realized that having all the money in the world didn't matter if he didn't have the people he loved to share it with, Cale was concluding. So he chose love instead. "And then you found us," Benicio added triumphantly. "And then I found you," Cale confirmed, pressing a kiss to the top of his son's head. "The most important discovery of my life." Later that afternoon, after the center had closed and the family had returned to the house they'd bought 6 months earlier, a comfortable 4-bedroom in a neighborhood with excellent schools and a backyard perfect for playground equipment, Maya found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. The house was nothing like Cale's former Boston penthouse, but it was everything they needed. Children's artwork covered the refrigerator, Toys were scattered across the living room and the walls echoed with the constant noise of a growing family. It was chaotic and imperfect and absolutely wonderful. "Penny for your thoughts," Cale said, joining her on the back porch where she was watching Benicio push Isabella on the swing set he'd installed last summer. "Just thinking about choices," Maya replied, settling against his side as naturally as breathing. "About all the moments in our lives when we could have chosen differently. Any regrets? Not one. Even the painful parts led us here. Even Jessica's manipulation? Even the 5 years we lost?" Maya considered this seriously. Even those things. If we'd stayed together 7 years ago, would we have been ready for this? Would we have appreciated what we have now if we hadn't almost lost it? "Philosophical questions for a Saturday evening," Cale observed. "I've been thinking about what advice we'd give to other couples going through what we went through. What would we tell someone facing the choice between career success and family happiness?" "That's easy," Cale said without hesitation. "We'd tell them that success without someone to share it with is just expensive loneliness. We'd tell them that family is the only investment that pays dividends in love." Very poetic for a former CEO. "I learned from the best. You've made me more articulate about emotions, and you've made me braver about taking risks." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children play in the golden hour light that made everything look like a painting. Isabella had convinced Benicio to push her higher, and her delighted squeals filled the air. "Cale?" Maya said suddenly. Thank you." "For what?" "For choosing us. For giving up everything you'd built to be part of our small, complicated life. For teaching me that love isn't just about feeling safe. Sometimes it's about being brave enough to trust someone completely. Thank you for giving me a second chance, and a third chance, and for loving me enough to let me prove that some people really can change. We both changed. That's what made this work." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, the family gathered inside for dinner. It was nothing fancy, leftover spaghetti and garlic bread, but it was served with conversation and laughter, and the kind of easy affection that comes from truly knowing the people around your table. After the children were bathed and settled into bed with stories and songs, Cale and Maya found themselves alone on their living room couch, sharing a bottle of wine and planning the week ahead. Soccer practice Tuesday, Isabella's pediatric checkup Wednesday, the meeting with the franchise investors Friday, Maya recited from memory. And don't forget Ben's school play next Thursday. He's very serious about his role as tree number 3. Most important tree in the forest, Maya agreed solemnly. "Do you ever miss it?" Cale asked suddenly. "The simplicity of being single, when the only person you had to worry about was yourself?" Maya looked at him in surprise. "Do you?" "God, no. But I was wondering if you did. This life we've built, it's beautiful, but it's not easy. There's always someone who needs something, always a crisis to manage. Always competing priorities. And I want to make sure you're happy. Really happy. Not just content or grateful, but genuinely fulfilled." Maya set down her wine glass and turned to face him fully. "Cale Donovan, are you fishing for compliments about your husbanding skills?" "Maybe a little. Well, let me be clear. This chaotic, complicated, never a dull moment life we've built together, it's everything I ever wanted but was too scared to ask for. You and our children are the best part of every single day. Even when Ben refuses to eat anything green. Even when Isabella decides 3 a.m. is party time. Even when we're both exhausted and overwhelmed and wondering how we're going to manage everything. I wouldn't trade this for anything. Even if I offered you $1 billion to go back to your quiet, independent life. Especially then, because I've learned that the richest life isn't measured in money. It's measured in moments like these. In children's laughter. In shared dreams, in the privilege of building something meaningful with someone you love completely. So no regrets about the CEO's wife who gave up her quiet life for chaos and children? None whatsoever. How about you? Any regrets about the billionaire who gave up his empire for sandbox castles and soccer practices? Only one. Maya's eyebrows raised. Oh? I regret that it took me so long to realize what really mattered. I regret all the years I spent thinking success meant being the most powerful person in the room, instead of being the most loved person at the dinner table. Well, you figured it out eventually, and you've more than made up for lost time. Have I? Sometimes I look at Ben and think about all the moments I missed in those first 4 years. His first steps, his first words, all those bedtimes when he needed his dad and I wasn't there. But you're here now, and you'll be here for everything going forward. That's what matters. Promise me something, Kale said, pulling her closer. Anything. Promise me that if I ever start taking this for granted, if I ever forget how lucky I am to have this family, you'll remind me. Even if it means having a difficult conversation or making me face uncomfortable truths. I promise. But Kale, I don't think you're in danger of forgetting. The way you look at our children, the way you prioritize family time, the way you've structured our business to support other families. You're not the same man who used to work 18-hour days without thinking twice about it. People don't really change that much, do they? I think people reveal who they really were all along. You were always capable of this love, this devotion. You just needed the right reason to let it out. As they prepared for bed that night, Maya caught sight of them in the bathroom mirror, two people who'd been through fire together and emerged stronger. Kale was brushing his teeth while simultaneously helping Isabella, who'd woken up and refused to go back to sleep without both parents, wash her hands, while Maya braided her hair and mentally planned the next day's schedule. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't the stuff of romantic movies, but it was real, and it was theirs, and it was perfect in its imperfection. You know what I think? Maya said as they finally settled into bed. Isabella contentedly nestled between them, a battle they'd long since stopped fighting. What's that? I think some love stories aren't meant to be simple. I think the best ones require you to fight for them, to choose them over and over again, to grow into the kind of people who deserve that love. Is that what we did? That's exactly what we did, and we're still doing it every day. Every day, Kale agreed, reaching across their sleeping daughter to take his wife's hand. As they drifted off to sleep in their comfortable, imperfect, absolutely wonderful life, both of them carried the same thought. They'd made the right choice. Every difficult decision, every sacrifice, every moment of uncertainty had led them here, to this bed, in this house, with these children, building this life together. Love had indeed conquered all. Outside, Portland slept peacefully, unaware that in one small house in a quiet neighborhood, a family was living proof that sometimes the most extraordinary stories begin with the simplest choice, to put love first, always. And in the morning, they would wake up and choose each other all over again. When life forces you to choose between success and love, between security and happiness, between the familiar and the unknown, what choice would you make? Your participation means a lot to the channel. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.